Well, hello, y'all. Let me change my background real quick. Perfect. So we got the episode going on here, and with the green cap, I did. Okay, so we got the episode here. It is entitled upon the series of other positive, structured, settled ideas that have to do with evidence forensic. No, has to do with the idea of mass shootings and mass shooters. Um, Absolutely not a joke, and absolutely no play on words here. But we are, or I am investigating the idea of should you be allowed to act, dress, or wear clothes in public like I guess, a mass shooter, and play on, if you will, or play words as you will. But this is parts the reality behind looking at importance and the benefit of reality and ethics towards safety. So here we go. We will go, and I will, as usual, put the strategy list up here of the things we are covering today, as the principle is a driving force towards the ethic of this question. And if you want to find a plain window to go and sacrifice your time and ideas towards, which I'm not, joking about completely. I mean, I'm talking about the reality of talking about the frenzy itself, which is just insane. So here we go. The first question, obviously, is in the middle centerfold here. Should you be allowed to act, dress, or wear clothes in public like imagining? And let's say the computer got a little confused when we first generated the perfect idea of the perfect question or perfect idea about getting this decal together. And always real life is always striking, because it always gets the best aspect, right? And it said, oh, yeah, first of all, we'll do it. It's kind of like the lone wolf hunter. It's the lone wolf that matters. But soon did recognize, the victim here is portrayed as beauty. They're like Beauty and the Beast. And I'm not sure if you're like kind of into these kind of anetic things or these ideas about, the mean-spirited singer, or like the dragon who is slayed by Arthur the Nerd, right? I mean, it's a kind of like a coincidental thing. But I had to explain to the computer today, saying, no, they have a lot more accessories and things like that. And it was weird talking to the computer. We'll do things, but it will just be kind of not very normal or honest, I suppose. I mean, why would I report this information? It's crazy. To a computer, it just doesn't make sense. Should you be able or allowed to act, dress, or wear clothes in public like them? Or, I mean, other ones. So, I mean, that's a bigger question of, I would say, that's a huge question. But is there an umbrella for it? I mean, of course, we kind of have to look back at the history of different organizations if they ever had funding for these things. But then you ask, why would it even be a choice? You have like all these little examinations. What would have been a choice to ask, if you were interpreting your personal, stress level and you needed to, do more things for the day or something like that. But when it goes down to looking at the statistics like I'm not sure. I mean, you might be dressed in black, but you're still wearing clothes, right? It's the color that is upsetting, because you're forecasting your mind, right? You're in the background, or you're in the personal space attention farther out, not through your own definition or communication style. I mean, basically, right? Everybody has a choice and chance in life, and it's not an absolute. It's usually an absolute, right? But it tells you can't focus. You can't build communication in a sense, because you're earning some sort of other potential. But the bigger thing there between the mass shooting and the capability of, or this crime, right, and you being able to dress like that, would be basically you have access to more ways to store things. And I'm not going to say, in a present day sense, we have like, the most capable clothes and it fits A and B and everything goes, swell. I mean, it just has more pockets, basically. You have more things for athletic things. I mean, there's many things you could do to wear certain clothes that would make you be a normal person. You are basically being supportive of your environment. If you're having more pockets, you're picking up trash, you're not disposing of things in an inappropriate way. You have like a space for maybe a water bottle. You have space for a lot of things. And generally speaking, you're not basically putting two and two together, because when you do that, You're paying people money. Like, you are on the go. You're on the go. I mean, you were able to do all the things you needed to do. There's no point in having no spot in your back pocket. It's kind of like, why do you put stuff in your back pocket? That's not normal, right? But it's not normal also to have clothes that are like, able to get bleach holes in them, or like bleach, spots in them, get holes in them. There's a lot of things a normal person would not do. Thinking, ergonomically, like a parent would or an adult, you'd say, oh, absolutely, that person is smarter. That person made better choices as to do more formidable things. And of course, as an adult, you'd also say, it's greedy. It's greedy asking the question of, should I be able to save money on my clothes? I mean, unless you're wealthier, and a lot of people sometimes are not wealthy, and sometimes they are wealthy. Sometimes, the middle, sections are very disarranged or arranged in a way that they do not talk, or they communicate in a certain way that does communicate very well, and it's with their own people. Because when you're out of the egg class of looking up or for north or for back, as they put it, but when you become into the wealth gap and it becomes greater, the up north conjecture is always resentful, or it's always, I wouldn't say resentful, it's always a remembrance of things like, the Japanese, like, atomic bomb, or like Hiroshima, or like, the kulaks from Russia, or like the concentration camp. I mean, they're all fundamentally, when you go up, I mean, you're striking force. You always striking force. And there's like a bigger question when you see a driver and they get entangled on the road and they think you're go in the middle road, you give them a hand sign and you say, oh no, you go to the left or you go to the right. And you're kind of like, okay, no, it's an entanglement. You're using defensive movements, just like anyone else would do. When you use up, it means you are prepared. You're prepared to be on unrest. You're prepared to take an opponent out. Basically, that is a striking moment. Okay, so you are allowed to dress like them, except you're not supposed to in certain ways. The other aspect is looking at communication and choice. I wouldn't necessarily say communication choice is an ethic by itself, but you'll get a lot of people even, who agree and disagree. That's their time. I would say public libraries are public libraries. You are able to present any information to the public you will, in many ways. You just have to find a formal way. And if you do little research online, you will even find, there's not many people will try or attempt to do it. So it's clear. There's clear communication errors or faults, but people just refuse to do it. But when you're wearing clothes, when you dress, you wear these ideas on you. They say something about you and they tell you, hey, I know who that is. And then, see the grounding force behind, there's a reality behind it. Just in cybersecurity, you're just looking at, different, means to make reality. If it's physical fitness, is it, physical training, they're opposites, right? Anybody who goes up a hill multiple times a day, or, flies in an airplane, they're doing physical therapy or physical training no matter what. It's interchangeable, even for psychology. For your stress, for a student, for a worker, for an astronaut, you're always going to go down to that ground floor and you're always going to sit there and you get a realization, right? But the effort you put in is also the effort you show. So if you have a structure that says, we're going to reverse the anti-enum, or we're going to say, oh, it doesn't really matter, just kind of like cybersecurity does, you're not aiming for the plus signs. You're aiming for the negatives. You're aiming for the perfect parts of it, and that's just kind of how society works. It's a grading system. You can look at other grading systems. There's nothing wrong with that. And the biggest, big league, doctors and the biggest, strategy leaders in all of the worldwide had different grading systems. They didn't all parallel themselves. You look at Mother Teresa, you look at Martin Luther King. You look at an average rapper from today, or a musician, or you're looking at a student or a writer, you are looking at completely different grading systems. You look at somebody in the military, you're looking at a grading system that's completely different. You're like, why is it so redundant? It's because it's been developed. It's become more developed over time, but it's never been partaken. I mean, it's like kind of asking yourself, would you be elusively, putting things in like random places? Nobody wants to do that. Nobody says, we do that, but it's the resources we have, basically. So when I think about it, I automatically go back to the biggest town or biggest city kind of scenario. I don't go to the small town thing. I go to the what is the most efficient way to look at things in a way that's investable, that's creating a statement that is shareable for people, and then finding a reality for that opponent. It's not as simple as clicking a button, some people say, because you want choices. You don't have the job to click the button. You don't want to click the button. right? If you're a manager of a business, would you manage other times of other business? That doesn't make sense, right? That you have to find a reality for why you're trying to do it. Even if you're trying to sell a stick from another country, or like selling seashells, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You're finding a reality behind finding science and the novice of like your strength, your hopefulness, and then the environment. Obviously, maybe drugs is a little bit different, and that does say a lot about entrance points, and we probably won't get into that today, and it's a serious thing. You're kind of looking at the aperture or the unreality of it. You're not making much money. You're going to an idea that doesn't make very much sense, and it is daunting, right? I mean, not daunting, but it's elusive, it's unsupportive, it's manipulative. There's a lot of places to put that word salad, but you're putting it in the choice you have. And then when it goes down to the frightfulness part of it, which is the things you see, and let's say words are words, words that don't mean the same words that they mean are word salad. Words that are mean and novice, as they put it, not novice, novice, or abrupt, aggressive, violent. Those are words you don't really want. They don't interchange because people say they change, right? If you say somebody's in psychosis, if you say somebody's in schizophrenic moment or bipolar, and bipolar might be a little bit different, but the spur of the idea is the same, right? It doesn't mean it's not resistive towards thinking. I mean, there's nothing that says that, right? You can go down to looking at the Geneva Convention or whatever, who made the document for APA, whatever regulation you're looking at. It doesn't say necessity is a part of that journey. That is a part of the slave culture. That is part of the monopoly culture behind controlling districts, if that's what you want to put it as. But anyone can invest at any time in any other language. It doesn't mean you have to speak English. It doesn't mean you have to develop a design for technology. It doesn't mean you have to necessarily believe laws, but you do believe them to live in a society that people agree with them. The reflection point doesn't matter, right? You're creating a reflection point in a conversation. You're going to shine it at your opponent or somebody you don't like. I mean, why? So, take, for example, you're on the road and you're using defensive tactics. If you do that and you were flat, foot, I mean, if you're right in the road and they actually challenge you, right? Even if you're on the street and you already know what is wrong and what is right? If they keep on zooming their car in and out and saying, "Oh, I'm going to run you over," the question is no. Check them out to see if they're drunk driving. It doesn't matter who you are. You're in a city. You're in a public place with kids. You're going to go stop that guy now. But the opposite, occurs, and you're finding a reality behind it. I'm the mom thinker. I'm the dad thinker, right? It doesn't matter. You're finding a way to resiliate. What is focus right here? It might be the bad day. It might be somebody's good day, right? But you're finding a way to not become within the secure flaws, right? You're finding a way to stay away from this uncategorization, right? And that's no one's business. That's a mainframe, right? You're looking at privacy. You're looking at a lot of things that are just not connected, right? If you ask what liability insurance right now you could have for active shooter, in principle, there's like one company, and I bet you they don't have a service automation right now. Or if you're looking for terrorism, there's a couple of companies, but one major company, and it might be Liberty Insurance, it might be something else. But when you look at Liberty, does it look like the same organization as the United Nations or the WHO? No, it doesn't. They don't fit in the same category. So you're readjusting and rethinking, right? I mean, your mom and dad shop, is not the same thing as it used to be, because you have to find an ambition behind those things. I think that's a bigger thing. So, if you've first, learning English, or you feel like you're kind of going into these culture shocks again, and I don't know why I have to explain it to someone like me, because I'm a big reader. There is a book. It's called To Kill a Mockingbird, and that should be a required read for any student in the United States, most likely. It's about this impression of prejudice about results in law. It's about reality behind ethic, and then supportive thinking. And this reality is also about the ambition of individuality as a racism concept, or privilege versus state of fact. It's a hard book to crack. If you're the sobber and you're always listening or reading to like to some other thing, right? To Kill a Mockingbird is a good book, right? I mean, it doesn't take the Sony picture, it doesn't take the Classon and Ma of something like where the crawdads sing, but the reality there is you're finding a way to break into some tone, right? Books aren't the books that we used to have. And when we started to develop a personification behind these figurative languages, the tone, you start to realize, everything is unjust. Everything has been filled with the privilege of, maybe I won't go straight to white and black, but slavery, about racism, about prejudice, about not just individuality. It's a slang of that. It's the killing of the stateless, right? So it's not about support figures in fiction anymore. You're looking at, waking up to the reality of this isn't just a textbook anymore. This might have been a story through life. Because you're patching these ideas together that are not just figurative. And you're not just fighting somebody burning books anymore. You're fighting figures in this helic response, right? And it's not an old Greek reference. It's a realization towards the adjustment of life. Receiving a gift in a way. As they put it, like the land on earth is the struggle you have, so you must make what you have of it. But it doesn't have to be a religious need. It needs to be a conclusive force, as they put it, or a way to enlighten the day as a normal. That might be in something Atticus Finch would say to kill Mockingbird. So let's go into some of the other questions here. Should mass shooting victims be able to have content that is considered illegal? Purposefully, I think the law boundary here says, yeah, we're going to push you in the corner no matter what. Or like we're going to push you on the side of the room, and you're going to be like, kind of, in your own class. You're the class within the class. That's what I think is society, class of society, right? You were in the social economics, or your social, history, whatever you want to call it, the political class. You're in the separate, opponent. You're basically, not evading. You're defending your argument there. That's the same for psychology. That's the same for a lot of it. Criminal justice system. I mean, once you bring it up, it might be more real. It might be more unsupportive, and they might say, "Hey, this is that." I mean, and that's kind of the thing about the rich and the poor nowadays. I mean, once you're rich, you find the struggle for academic support might be easier because you have these committees that say, "Oh yes, we've integrity. The student is asking questions, since such and such." But the more unwealthy, or maybe the habit forming, as they put it, like habit forming, the society is, you might find that they're unsupportive of this reason. It might be the technical or technical force. You're pushing the teacher too far. Now, it might be arguments, it might be something else, but that's just kind of the school of the land, the law of the school. That's the way academic support goes. But at the same time, the technology to debrief students like that might be more of a European clause. You might have never seen that before. Even if you're British, even maybe French, someone not really going to see it very much unless like you're kind of like the middle ground of Europe. Some actual other places as well, but it's really segregated over there. So you'd have to say, in America we call it segregated. To them, you call it something else. It's like inevitable, or it's the point of existing. It's flow versus the structure, input output, basically. But again, that's a social matters as well. So it's just not really been developed. But so you can have content that's illegal, I guess, technically, but you have to look at it, as mature as possible. If you're looking at data science wise, just think about it that as a precaution. No, I mean, once you lose data, you lose data. I'm not saying like you're a kid and you have to do that's a gray area. I mean, you probably have to find some clarification there. But you're looking at a reality of content that is considered legal. Like if you're like mass shooting victim, you recorded it and then you didn't want the evidence, or they kind of pushed you in the way or out of the way. I mean, as they would say, you have given your phone over. That's technically tampering with the evidence if you're doing that. But if they don't say that, and there's some sort of adjustment within the law, I don't think there's anything legal with keeping a video unless you're addressing the situation somehow. And formally, I mean, I wouldn't just ask them. I would speak to a lawyer, or would speak to like some sort of forum community, because more and more adults, they're always going to just say, don't do that. I don't get a notary, and get a notary for everything you do. Get a notary for every transaction you have with a federal agent. Any person, let's not call them a federal agent. Let's call them out of their boundary, right? It's not their job to tell you, what you can do and what you cannot have. That's your lawyer agreeing with a discipline from the court. That's a discipline because the court says this and that is a reason, right? And it might be a formal law where you live, or it might be a formal tradition, as they put it. And let's underline the word tradition. Unless they're going to emphasize, why it's a reason, they're not going to call it anything else besides a tradition. And that is not because of any, seclusive force, unless it is a reference towards, seclusive data in which they want to request, and they don't want you to have access to it for certain reason, for questioning, for certain things like that. But the seclusive need of something formal, like society or criminal justice system, or what they consider the ritual, like the maintenance or the maiden talk, right? It's not really technically part of it, but it's another gray area. So you just have to find a seclusive way, as they put it, to the courts. It's not tradition. There's a reason you want this. But again, don't just go to a judge, because when you just go to a judge at a court, they're not going to write these things down. You're going to have it, and they might have it for 6 months. But notary, save on an email, save on a data server. You can request this information for a lawyer, or you can put it in the server and say, "Oh, lawyer, I have this document." It will save you a lot of time and money, because once you bring that back into the court, and it will never be lost, will never be seclusive. If you have an appropriation, which is self-respect, or your standing is fine, you can bring that document to a court anytime, and it will be liable information for a court against any justice, any head of government, any state representative, or any agent. So let's go to the next question here. Can someone deserve to be in a mass shooting? And let me start you right here. No. There you go. So there is no reason to be in a mass shooting that is ethical, that is in a public place, obviously. And there's no reason to go attack people as though they are in a mass shooting. The only survivable story in which you will find is in the CIA or NSA notebooks, and they will be about basically, or maybe FBI, which they have and have not. You'll find stories about yes and no, more no nowadays. But the reality is that can you be deserving to be in a mass shooting if you're a killer, if you're untangible, like you're in heist, you're a killer, you're a murderer, you're about to go kill people? Well, yes. If you're a terrorist group and you're striking somebody, you can be deserving of it, but it's not the word deserving. You are basically saving somebody's life. You're protecting someone from a mass shooting, and you are realizing basically the clock is ticking. You don't count the debt. You are going to act, and you're going to act sufficively to go take out your opponent. There's no story. There's no traditional ethical landing behind it. It is tradition itself. If the arm moves, you move with the arm. If you move away from the arm, you go take the arm out, basically. It's not as seclusive as the maiden tongue. It's not seclusive as the ritual. It's tradition. Basically, it's a psychology. You're creating a ethical support for your envisionment, right? So it's not about the street clothes you wear. It's not about the badge you hold. It's not about the agent who you are, or the public service representative, the journalist you are, the person who has the liability insurance, the business owner, or even whoever you may be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Your seclusive need to be in the public and the address level of whatever it is, communication. Whether it's sanitary needs, whether it's safety, whether it's protection needs, whether it's the latency between mother and father and their child, whether it's the reality of driving your car, and that's the biggest one. You can underline that one right there. Whether it's the reality of finding time, and we're calling it spare time. Whether it's finding a surprise, need for something, and we call that seclusive need. Like, if you're focusing through a function that is divisional and you're breaking apart something, you're breaking apart it for a reason. So when you look at somebody and say, "Hey, you broke apart something for a reason," but it wasn't, a need of you, right? If you're putting nails in the street and you're like, "Oh, I don't know what you do," or if you're putting nails in the sidewalk and I don't know what you're doing, there's a point to all that. There's no reason for that. If you say, "Oh, hey, I'm going to go and work on, this thing right now, and I'm going to do whatever, and I don't have enough time," then it's time that matters, right? You in the, time of like 8 to 4 or something, when like the most house robberies happen. I mean, this is normal thoughts, right? Why would you go against normal thoughts? Because it's unethical, because you had too much school, substance abuse, maybe alcohol abuse, maybe you got some problems now. Where have we heard that one before? But the reality, the more you think about it, the more breaks apart is it's not a question of data. That's the bigger word. That's a huge word. Sequester. I don't think I use that word very much, and I promise you, as an adult male in my 30s, as they call it, military age, you don't usually use that word. You don't sequester a ship. You don't sequester an SOS signal. You don't sequester a piece of paper from, a professor. You don't requester that as a doctor, in a medical field. It's not normal talk. Right. I mean, it could be kid play at once, but as you go into the more normalized places that have less stress and less people do shitty things. Right. They might have these laws for locking guns up or things down south or anywhere in the United States, obviously. But there are reasons for that. Just the same as energy is a loophole. Right. You don't need energy to survive. Right. There are reasons for the attachment theory. There's reasons for the detachment theory, but they don't relate that way. There's attachment, detachment, and there's conclusive reasoning, as that is an attachment itself, right? I guess, but you wouldn't use it in the past tense sense. So let's go on to the next question. Obviously, I see no viewers here, and I'm just one guy. So let's go on. All right. So the next question is not deserving of the last one. Obviously, it's completely different. In the case of a mass shooting occurrence, what federal court should be notified first? The ones in territories with more secure laws, or the ones or less secure laws? And we're talking about some pretty big things here, right? So if you're notifying somebody, at sea, it would be completely different from at land because they have completely different sets of laws in international waters. So international people will say, and so the businesses will say, and so the people in those countries will say, and so will the ethics will say, but they're primarily somewhat similar to on land, somewhat. And that's through pressure, that's through no fault of your own, and that's also through accidentality or a precaution for natural disasters at the most, right? Because the most enduring facts and features that we know on Earth are always fighting the most probable environment chaos, right? And then that's because they're not inhabitable. They're not habitable, right? So the reality they're on land, you're looking at laws of things like drinking, smoking, sexual intercourse, marriage, and then other things that go along with them that are huge. Might be driving, it might be something like drinking and driving, or it might be related towards marriage, like incest, like things like that. When it becomes more graphic over time, what do you think happens? So on a measurement of a scale for a normal human being, you count to 5, right? For a normal human being who gets angry, you count to 10, right? So what do you do when basically you have no structure at all and you need to report the thing? My friend over there, he counted to 5 and he did a bad job. And then he went and counted to 10 and he did a worse job. Who do I report him to? You're kind of out of luck there, right? If you're in the midst of the Alabama, Missouri area, I'm not saying they're connected, but the reality there says, one is don't mess around, don't FA. And the other guy says, you can do about half of that. I don't want you to count to 10 anymore. I want to count you to 5 and you can get out of here. I got to do my job. Or, the other guy says, no, you count to 10, you stay silent, and here's the cuffs. And you might be on the board and say the same thing, but you also might be in the serenity or the reality of, the Chicago or the Chicago, Illinois, or the central area of, not Florida. Well, yeah, Florida, and then the central area of Las Vegas. And kind of like, I'm a free will person. I don't have to count to anything. So, what is the case and point where you're kind of like, going from the left leaning to the right leaning or the central leaning? I'm gonna have to ask yourself the basic question about who gets there first. So of course, the FBI says not a thing. We have this jurisdiction here, but when you look at the federal laws here, it says real young on there. It says at 16 you can get married and do whatever. Of course, the laws will obey it. And they'll say, hey, we don't do that. But when you look at the strict district laws and you look at the tradition or the reality of what they're doing, well, this place and not. Oh, no, actually, it was Georgia, Atlanta, and they were doing that, or, it was New Jersey. Oh, no, they were growing cocaine, and they were at a cocaine field for the soda pop machine. Oh, but it's legal? Oh, okay. Or the place in California. Oh, they have the opium. All right. Or, in Las Vegas, or in Chicago, they're like, oh, they have Club Med over there. Is that still going on? So I mean, there's a reality there behind what is wrong and what is right. I mean, you might go to the border and say, "Oh, you've been hanging up these stickers on the wall. That's an arrestable offense right there. That girl over there, she belongs here on the streets, right?" So take for example, what do you do when you do something wrong, right? I mean, it's not. Is it wrong to do something right? No, you got to think about it like yeah, no, but the precaution is like you're starting over, and that's exactly it. You're starting over, right? When you jump from one to the other, and everybody just didn't get it one time, they started over, right? In a way, but you'll have to figure it out on your own, I guess, since I can't prove it. But the reality is, you're looking at a piece of paper. It's neither life nor death. Where are you working? You're probably working in prison, right? You're the white collar worker in prison, or you're looking at the adjustment, maybe, if that's what you want to call it. All things life and death, the adjustment. I mean, IOU falls true. No. Okay. So, when you're reporting something, how does that fit into the precaution? And they say like, California, you're like a loony, like you got out of prison, you got into prison, and then you're working now like you're crazy. You're haywire. Well, when they see that in New Jersey, like you got the spiky hair, the crazy, like they got the cocaine fields for the Coca-Cola company, or Georgia, like we're mass producing this, right? So there's some differences there. Or they might say like, oh, the sleight of hand is like, we also have access to like, precious metal. I'm like, oh, aren't you like the guy there? I'm like, oh, no, I'm more like kicking it. Like it's not a reality behind the truth, right? You and me might be different, but me is like kind of like the social, teacher. I'm the one with the schoolhouse rock shirt, right? So I'm the one who like makes the choice. You don't make the choice, and you didn't get there. We're talking about reporting, right? We're talking about the support network you could have, and I could say it goes on all day and all night. I could say like 12 o'clock at night. Let's announce the night right now. Whoa, that's way too loud. Or what if I didn't get to hear? So reality is, FBI agent listen, but they didn't listen. And this is a hard question to break here. You go from FBI, you go to the reality of choice. Like, yeah, you're FBI agent, you go do it now. And then, or you go like, I'm the Department of Work, you go do that now. Or like you're like the president, like, do it. Or like, oh no, I work for the CIA. We already did it. And you're like, hey, let me raise my hand. You clearly did not do it. And then you bow your head again, and you're like, you clearly didn't even try to handle it, right? So the question becomes more ethics based, right? If all ethics, followed all ethics, and they said like, one CIA agent didn't have a bandage on his head, he took a chloroform rag and he started chloroforming people, and he did bad. And you're like, yeah. And the other guy said like, the only guy who to come forward was the guy who pushes the button, or like, he could have went to prison more. I mean, the thing there is, what is it, in reality to the work job that would, be suffice to say, this and that, right? If you proved yourself wrong many times, would it show up on the piece of paper? No. Would you relate it towards the prisoner? Or like a strike group of like terrorists? I don't know. I mean, or would you relate it towards like, kind of like, the annoying person in town? They don't really do much. They shout at you, but, they find a reason, oh, I don't really have to do that. Oh, I don't feel like that. Or like, just because it's an exclusive group of my classmates, I don't feel like it. Or like, let's say, oh, I belong to the FBI 09. Nice to meet you. You pull out, whatever, secular reason you have to exist. I don't think you got it on me. But the reason or reality there is it's what's supportive of who you are. Right? You're the bandage of the FBI. You're kind of saying, this is on my forehead. I'm a thief. And that wouldn't really go well, right? It wouldn't go well saying, you have a security clearance for a plane, right? It wouldn't go well saying you have a security clearance for a train, right? It wouldn't say, you are good at going into multi-facility. So you see what I'm saying? Like, you being a security guard doesn't mean anything. You being an FBI agent, I mean, you can throw it out the book. If you're looking at the CIA and you're saying you are the class act, but you don't even get it proved, there's no ethical thinking lines. If you go one plot of like, mud, if your kid is feeding you bread today and it's like, uncooked bread and said, here you go, or spaghetti, like, here you go. And they said like, I can do better. Or, I feel like, I'm the CIA agent, I got the posture from out of seas, like, here you go. There's a relationship there again. Is it, on tail? Is it, fit together like, shapes, or, the idea of like, I'm going to figure this out. I think it's still not into the counting power. It's the power of, counting yourself at the same time. You were doing the same thing as them, right? You have the monitoring system to do whatever. It might be signals, it might be planes and trains, it might be cars, it might be video cameras sometimes. But you're also looking at a lot of relationships in data. And you know why the relationships in data don't fit? Because people don't read the book, right? I'm a published book writer. I worked for a book writer for a math company. Maybe it was a Collins dictionary. Maybe I helped publish that book. But what I do see is there's a fair advantage, and then there's an advantage of what we call cooking in the math world, or finding a reason for an answer that we just didn't want to read today. We liked it a lot. We didn't want to read. We didn't want to find a way to do something that shows that things can be similar sometimes. Things don't have to be out of hand. They don't have to show that individual reason is different. And I know it's terrible. When you lose somebody's life and it says, this is awful that she did this, or, what she did was unexcusable. I mean, it hurts a lot down there in your heart. And it might hurt your feelings. It might hurt your emotion in the long run, right? And it might hurt, when you trust somebody over time, it can be difficult to relearn who you are, right? And it's a frustration. I think most people have, and I think the FBI, I think the CIA, I think anyone there would have that at any time or at any given moment. But I think the reality there is, it hurts more when somebody lies to you, right? And if somebody believes in a false lie for over and over again, you find, it might not be so tricky of a question to not ask the question of why you would trust somebody like that. Would you trust somebody who lied to you about killing your friend? Would you trust somebody who would hurt, somebody in your life, or, did something they shouldn't, or exclusively was so laid back they started smoking pot, they started getting a job that they couldn't handle? It might have been related towards the mental health, it might be physical health, right? There's a really big difference, but the categorization they're putting you in to get there is a big thing, right? Whether it's sci-fi, whether it's understanding or finding a way to create balance in your life. That's ethical. That's important. If I took my first name and I translated it to Sanskrit, I would find it wouldn't show up in the regular dictionary. But if you go further back to like a harder tense or more open, Sanskrit, right, you'd find that it means peace, right? So I always take that with me in some notion, right? So I always take one thing, I make something out of it that I can. Because I know a lot of facts, but it doesn't mean I can read a lot of facts at the same time. I can memorize them, I can read them before, and it comes to me as I go. So it is a hard perception, but also the agility part is me. Train, wake up in the morning early, go and find a way to go and find a reality, which is keep these muscles working. This 1% doesn't earn itself. You have to find a structure in life that will earn this, right? It's a business technique, maybe, but you find a reality between what you're trying to occur with or do, and you try to do it the right way. Even if it is not a computer, if you're a computer with no screen at all, ever, find a way to do it without doing it. Find it in your skill set to kind of develop a way to do it. It's more important. And I think that's the bigger thing. You're looking at the principle of looking into something that is strong, that's hard to look at. It might be, fatherly figure that's gone. It might be something else, but you're finding a way to rewrite that structure that is healthy for you. It is a healthy emotion to find that you're stable in life. And that goes along the lines of anyone with this misfit, type of life. And a lot of people don't realize they have that misfit type of life. And it's hard to find a, what we consider angle towards. We don't call it agile. We don't call it a frozen time point. We don't call it, an irrationality. We call it responsibility, right? But the reason, the bigger reason is to find a way to go for something you need to go for. And that's the important thing. Not proving somebody wrong through the persecution. That's the bigger thing, right? I think you're realizing that just because you have information doesn't mean it's relatable to anything that could happen, right? It's inclusive again, right? It's not even on the same axis. You're creating classes, and where classes come. These fake little stories, or these stories that have been translated over time that says, they're observed and reported. There have been bad people in the world. So some stories are real, and they might come from Russia or something like that. It says, during experiments, and they said, they can monitor you I can make it, it's kind of like in America today, but you're looking at a lot of people that says, say they will do something, they don't prove it though. Do you have a lot of people proving things online through classes, or finding a reality behind the class structure you live in, sociology or society? You do not. If you need public water, you go to the sink automatically. You have a lot of people who aren't thinking about the quality of life and asking why or why not. So I think most Americans would say you're obviously from another country. You're obviously going through something. You're obviously thinking something that is different than somebody else, and there's a reason for it. But again, since the trends, kind of like the big three dots, and what makes it like journalism or something, you're extending the story for a reason. You're creating a reason for that effectiveness. You understand? So when you go into more and more of these secure laws, who should be required to report, it is an agency contingency, right? You're looking at many agencies. When it goes to JTAC, the expansion team to go investigate or go and work the streets, do they get notified? Yeah, they get notified, but then the reality is that it goes to another page. It's like delta to alpha. Then is there a mix-up? Yeah, echo right in between there when it goes catch all, and you wonder, how did he catch the bullet? It's the echo part. So when you look online, you look at the technology expense, you look at why people aren't talking, you look at why people aren't cross-changing the idea, the noise in their mind, the benefit of academic education, the benefit of the government, the benefit of people, right? It's the benefit part. People are open for a reason, right? There's not really good words to it. It might be valence, it might be society as a whole. It might be the consideration of the last name, the strength, the basis, the attempt of hope, right? The heart. You might find that the reality there is pressurized. I mean, it's a big thing when you don't have a lot of people communicating, thinking the same thing. One thing the government does know: when you think that way, you are acting like this, you're doing this, you're thinking things through like this. And what does that say to you? They might say, hey, a lot of racists back in the who burned homes down act that certain way, or a lot of people who are slave owners acted that way. A lot of people who killed Americans think like that. And they might say, well, yeah, a lot of mass shooters do that, right? But when you look at saying, I was the victim here, I was doing this, I was not finding a relationship, and I'm not saying now. No one has to say now. It's the persecution of the second, the minute, the hour that matters, right? It's the day that it keeps on going, and it's the week that will go after. Same as for anyone with addiction, alcohol. It's poison, right? A cigarette's poison. A lot of poisons end up in your system, and you have to wait these hours, these seconds, these minutes out. They matter. But the more you find that reality of, you're not finding a strength, you're finding a purpose to do something, the reaction through competitive addiction or addictive, reasoning or mindsets, it starts to build on you, and you find, no way out, right? And it takes maybe a depression and economic collapse for people to start to understand and function within the reality, right? So it's a hard one to push. No one's saying it's the same as mass shooting, but there are some similarities there. It is just as addicting as anything else, really. So let's go on to the next question. What if a mass shooter has a fetish? That's a tough one. If a mass shooter had a fetish, you probably have to ask yourself, what does that mean? What does it mean you have a fetish? You're looking at killing people online or something, or you're looking at, maybe doing something bad and harming, but you'd have to ask yourself, how did it get here? That's the bigger question. You can't just adapt and presume, variables are variables. There's names for everything, right? That person made an action or choice that made an adjective. It doesn't mean maybe it's the end of the world, I would think, right? I mean, if you were a normal person and you became obsessive or compulsive and you started, finding ways to do things that shouldn't make sense, you probably say, there are reasons they have to or they don't have. I don't know, right? But the reality there is, maybe reporting the information, obviously, firsthand is a good idea for the right authorities. Is it tells you a lot of QQs or COCOs, and then they tell you, hey, why is there the fetish? It's kind of like the same as somebody on TV saying is there a fetish for such and such, or do I have a reality and a choice, right? When you create the choice, you create the action, they're all supportive, right? So you have a reason to do them. It doesn't mean you're unsupportive. It means you're supportive of your emotion, your intelligence, and your IQ, maybe. Your face time, your mountability to do something, your active qualities of your life, quality, right? But The relationship, a fetish shows, it shows that, there is an atonement they're trying to make, or there's a reality behind their psyche, which goes in this whole psychology of finding a value through their functioning, or function through their form of mentality or strength or structure, which has to do with giving away some sort of truth, right, as well. But it's also giving a forte into the surrounding information. So, I mean, that could be good and bad, and also a reminder, right, or an IOU that could be supportive towards, finding a way to free think, or, it could maybe, if you're, let's say your mother, father, or your grandparent was murdered, or, family friend, you think, it's a hyperventilation thing, kind of thing. You're finding a way to be seclusive, maybe as some professor of psychology would say, or, it would be finding an atonement, I would say, as a way of enlightening, right? A lot of people forsake that, or the idea of, like, pre-adjustment, adjusting, or, finding a devisement into. You're finding a way to conceitedly, talk to yourself about your problems, right? The most pressing problem is always the most pressing problem. That is true for everyone. It's in the back of the head, it's in the back of the moment, it's always going to be there. It's the instinct, but it's not the instinct. You're writing the words out in what you already know. You're built differently, you develop differently, you have different thoughts, you have genetic different responsibilities, and you're finding a way to find a measure to tone, or finding a way to work with your system that you have. And that's difficult from person to person, because there's nothing that's ever been proven that says yeah or no, people are different in certain ways. But you can look at different things and find a hypothesis, right? So if you have it, you're finding a reason, why something is out in the public like this, in a way. So when you're finding something out like that, that's not a private moment, it's not a private reality, you're finding a reason for something as well. And you'll find, some people that say, hey, that's not true, or you'll say, hey, yeah, that's true. But the reality there is also, it's out in the public because it might be, idea memorization is one of those things for younger adults, for people who don't think, normal thoughts. Sometimes, like, you're crazed, you're addicted, you're drunk. When you have these fetishes, they become, in realities. You're finding a way to create an outcry within your self-esteem. It might be your ego, but at the same time, as Sigmund Freud would say, I mean, there's self-replication, or Jung would say, that reflection is the same moment in which you find your ID, self, and ego, which is basically a proven point. Every action is also the close, or the action that is problematic. So, if you find it, you report it. I mean, the FBI line there is cyber crimes tip line right there. Always a good place to report it. I mean, you report it to the Crime Stoppers, I guess, if there's nothing else. But will the report, go through? I mean, it's maybe not. Let's go to the next question here. But I mean, if it's the website you're wondering, also, maybe a forum moderator doesn't have their account information anymore. Maybe the website has been purchased and it's on a data host on another country with legal loss or something, or perhaps that the forum moderator is dead. I mean, take Aaron Swartz, for example. I mean, he's Reddit forum, editor, monitor. He's dead. You look at LinkedIn. There's plenty of LinkedIn accounts. Why wouldn't you have a LinkedIn account if you have so much money, you have so much time on it? I mean, there's plenty of reasons to do something, but seclusively, again, you don't blame rich people for a lot of damage to your things, right? So you're kind of looking at stories from back in the day, which were given purpose stories. I mean, yeah. But at the same time, were they looking at stories now that are given purpose? I mean, not really. You're looking at selective reasoning between education and maybe support for the community, like a mayor or governor would be, or something like that. And kind of like looking at the president saying, yeah, we need more information. Or looking at that, we need more information. Looking at people, we need more information, right? A business owner, why can't we have more information? Why do you have a security clearance if your contractor is a contractor for people? Do you have liability insurance? I mean, so the reality there's liability for mass shooting insurance. I mean, maybe it costs $300 for one person. What does that mean, right? I mean, why wouldn't I get that? Look at me. Would I get shot in a mass shooting? Yeah. Who wouldn't try to kill me in a mass shooting? And then is it a gang? Yeah. Who wouldn't ask, is it a gang, right? Why wouldn't I get that if I wanted to, have liability? You know what I'm saying? So, there isn't really a true answer behind that. And there isn't a true answer to say terrorism is not mass shooting. Then you go, and you go, I don't really trust that dude. where you go, I can't make words up behind these ideas that are normal, I really wouldn't trust that person either. I would say kind of like, that's weird. Same question is like, who would you report? Who would you report to if it was changed? If the information, in front of you was not changed in an appropriate way, that, didn't put somebody, in some place that was not healthy, or, like you one singled a child in a mass shooting and they can have liability insurance in the future or something, or like you did them out or did them under. There you go. Weird ideas are weird ideas. So, take it as a grain of salt, but shucks. If it was something else in the world, then you would think probably, there has to be fast trees or way to do it. It's like anything else. Let's go to the next question. But obviously, positivity. It always makes you stay loose. It always tells you, well, obviously, you never have a way to, evaluate it in a way. It's almost timer. It's kind of like the Big Bang Theory. But you're looking at, you're not negative. You're not, testing positive for the things. You're positive and you're testing loose. You're testing, you're the distressed one. I didn't prove you positive. I proved you are on the grounds of positivity, or in the network positivity. You were positive because structure and strength says, hey, it's not you're just positive. You're actually functioning as though what is it? You have no informal reason. You're just on the right guidelines, right? And that goes for about anyone. It's the numbers that matter. It's you're counting numbers that are generalized. You can never count numbers that are exact. That's crazy, right? So you're looking at the system again. So that's equality. That doesn't say negatives and positives are different. You're looking at realities there. But generalizations, they always stay the same. Words always stay the same. Qualities always stay the same, but it just hasn't been proven. So this next question here: what if a mass shooter or group goes way too fast, faster than anyone else? What if they go slower? Are they a good runner? Damn, I'm the top 1% of something in the world, but I can't count it. What about the mass shooter? Can they not count something that's 1% in the world? What about somebody else? Are they top 5%, 2%? Are they trying? I'd say the correlations there are pretty strong. I'd say yeah, gosh, the 1%er there is probably doing the most work in certain areas, and it makes perfect sense. Or the person who is opposing the question, what about if they said, hey, stop, they don't do that, or stop, this has happened before, or stop, the reality there is, you don't have a jurisdiction. Well, think, are you 1% of something, or are you the 2% of something? So the list goes on, the reality goes on. Let me go say, stop, is this fiction or purpose or real? You have to say, I don't really have an answer for you for that one. You got to do it by the books, right? Do it by the books by doing it by the science, right? That's how the best Olympics would go, or Olympians would go, or the best science class would go, or do it by the fictitious logistics or hypothesis, right? Do it by the best computation available. Don't break the logic of the computation, because it will stay valuable. Right. So I think as people, we have to start to learn to do that no matter what. We're looking at mass media. We're looking at mass adjournment. And that's not a word, right? You're looking at, reference points that or reminders back in the day, and the things in between are not very good. And you're reminding yourself every single day of, this is wrong, or this is right. This is right, and this is wrong. So, just because the screen flips over and it says different things, but do I see it on my screen? Right? So the possibilities are reminders, right? In a way, compared to a computer. You just don't have a reason, because you have to find a way to work yourself out of this moment, this problem here, which is important. You creating something for yourself is the biggest move in your life, because you're finding a way to settle, a way to fit into society. The more you hold, the more information that's at stake, the more you find a way to communicate, the way you find to create a way to talk to people, a way to depart from problems as well, or remediate any unsolution or nonsense, right? So if you go slower, you go faster, there are ways, but it hasn't been broken. And this is a question of game theory, of hypothesis, of in many things, the functions of life. Of course, someone will say, yes, it is evident that certain theories are relevant. And say chaos theory is one thing. You'll find that that's not a relationship towards the bigger moment of openness, consciousness that you right. The reason behind that is because it was existed, it was created for that. It's a part of a bigger picture, which is a solution, right? You're finding a solution or a formal peacemaking plan or peace reminder or a way to find as a civilian or society, social structure, whatever it is, you're finding a way to fit in with the public eye. It's not about the edict itself. It's not about the big five, if that's what you want to put, but it's part of a bigger motion there, which is finding a way new to compare, contrast, find a solution in a way. Like the Venn rims 3 diagram. All right, so let's go on to the next question. And of course, when you ask, again, if we go back to the last one, goes way too fast or goes way slower, you have to ask where the money is reposite between those things. What else is safety? And then also, a lot of things like fortune, which we call fortune, like finding things out in arguments. And then, or logic, which are fortune of like being nice, finding a new something, new shirts, a new instrument, new something, right? You're finding a way to fine tune. But the reality also is, you're finding the currents. That's another flip side of the question. You're retaining the idea of something. But that's, again, a systematic thing. Just because a green light is a green light to somebody doesn't mean it's a light to somebody else. Of something else, right? But the point is, you're on 2 wheels, you're on 4. It all matters. You're in a 4-wheeler, you're an 8-wheeler, a 3-wheeler. It all matters. Who you are is defined by some of the things you have, surroundings, the sociology, the society around you. So what's the next question here? What if someone who pushed or manipulated the shooter goes way too fast, stays hidden, says they are way too slow at things? A big city rule, small city rule. I mean, there's a lot of questions behind that. I mean, you're a counselor, you push somebody. You're not a counselor, push somebody. You're a teacher who pushes somebody. A lot of pushing going around, but not a lot of thought, not a lot of proactive thought that's helpful, right? So you might say, hey, teacher, can I have an A if I didn't, try very hard and, I was doing other things, or, I didn't really finish my work and I used AI or something, or you can like, oh, sure, Austin, or like, hey, sure, but I don't want to hear any more of the mass shooting jokes. They need to stay hidden, and just because I said that doesn't mean I'm staying hidden. Or I say things way too. I'm too slow at this, or like I pushed you and I manipulated the idea of the shooter. So I mean. Or manipulate the shooter goes. What if someone who pushed or manipulated the shooter goes way too fast? I mean, way too fast. I mean, I lost track of the conversation again. So, I mean, you would probably think like, would a normal person think that, or would they keep on saying it repetitively, go into groups and say like, hey, that? But then what if you said like, oh, you said it once again and you already had the answer, right? I mean, so I'm kind of like, is it hypnotism? I mean, are you looking at positive subtraction, or like finding a way to be elusive, or finding a way to amount to something? Maybe if we're like trying to amount to something, saying, hey, I do it big or I don't do it at all, or like I'm a rapper now, or like I'm a airplane driver, but that's not my job contingency. I would say probably that isn't your job contingency, but some of it is in a way. Or are you more secure? And you're saying like maybe not the airplane driver, or maybe the other things, but the relationship there, does it stay hidden? What else stays hidden behind those things? I mean, a shooter stays it. So you got to compare 1 to 1. I mean, if you're one variable, one mass shooter versus one mass shooter, is it the same thing? Oh, no. Then you're looking at a different contingency. You're looking at variables, right? Not pitfalls. I mean, you didn't pitfall your way into mass shooting, did you? One pitfall equals one pitfall. It doesn't even remind me of anything. Right. So I mean, like everybody tripped on the haywire as a kid, and they said, oh, we tripped the one kid who tripped and the one adult who tripped. But say, yeah, but there's no problem. They didn't get too hurt. But what about like the person like who drove off the cliff? Or like now the person who didn't drive off the cliff because there's not a bridge, but there's like a divider. They're like, yeah, kind of. Or like you're kind of like, what about the microscope with oil and the one without oil? So I mean, there's contingencies, but then there's also, fast and slow. So I think we're missing the point there. We're missing the point because things are not just way too slow. They're not just too reasonable. They're not unreasonable. They're just, on a hiatus. As a normal person would say, I think this is a very generalist question of like the super priority of the ego, not the ego, I'm sorry, of contingents of maybe governance, like, social welfare versus like social contingency of like cogent thought versus, supreme thought, or like, what is abnormal or sound thought, right? I think that's the principle of ethics as a support system for language, one thing, but then also, you look at it as a full statement, full contention of, or contentment of like a scene, or, the idea of something. I'm going to do something. You will do something. I should do something, or they will do something, right? There's a contingency that says, you're not God, right? You're not going to make a decision. You're literally saying something. You might be sick. You might be sickly. You might be the teacher who's tired, or an airplane driver who doesn't know much, or the security guard who's like, or the agent who doesn't, feel like it. I mean, it's not normal behavior. I mean, one is compulsive, the other is realistic. But again, you're teaching the cogent pattern in thought that is sound to unsound ethic. So it makes it, spiteful. You creating the situation of a conversation that continues to go without wrapping up the conversation, finding a reason to do it. I mean, the contingent part is also already unsound. It's an unsound belief system if people believe it that, and then it's also uncogent plus cogent. I mean, that's a reference there of backwards thought. I think most people would say like, oh, that is the opposite of the rationality behind, the freeze on the athletics versus, the academic, the cotton versus the polyester. I don't think you would necessarily say one is versus the other. As a system wide, you might say one is pressurized, one is not pressurized. As it is a contingency to like, do something as a new novice or no reason, right? The other one is like looking at finite substance. That's part of ethics as well. And then the concurrence of that is that it is kind of wrapped into the theory, right? Just because it's cogent and it translates to something else doesn't mean it's not infinite. And this question is completely about ethics and, what to consider photos. It's infinite. It's an infinite question of reality. It belongs to some sub-universe or universal tonology, which is like kind of, did you see that? Did I see that? What are the senses? It's the approximation of, why things we see. It's a kind of like a framework of language. So I think, when you look at the progress of that question, you would look kind of like at Aristotle or Plato's kind of like race is a theory, kind of like Sparta seeing race as a theory versus like, the Italians or the Rome Empire. Does that mean like, someone like Julius Caesar would have, one finiship, or, kind of the idea of like the monopoly or the democracy that is the monopoly, whatever they want to call it, the fine tunement of their support, whatever it is. But doesn't really mean much. It just means you're wrong about, certain things, that there's a preset notion for something. And that goes into the race idea, that goes into race theory, that goes into not critical race theory, again, maybe. It goes into a race approximation, like you're creating a thing like the Articles of Confederation, or another article that goes into the reality of that and kind of branches out into something like, the Confederates in psychology, which is a real testing measure. So if you have one versus the other, or, both of them, they're both systematic in a way. They're showing you they're a system of choice when all you have to relate to is like, bugs, the earth, branches on a tree, right? Two of things, pairs, buds and leaves. So yeah, when you say to somebody, buds, or, I have the idea of, some solution, it's racist. As a non-Mormon would say, I mean, you would say, you're inclusive of reason, of conclusivity of not assumption or summative thinking. I mean, of kind of approximation. I mean, you're looking at something as, it's criminal. And when I say criminal, I mean, without an answer, it's just criminal. It's still, selective reasoning, and then therefore a criminal community. Desensitization of society as a community basis, right? So, okay, there we go. Let's go to the next one. What if someone says, maybe with a needle in the arm or something, some sort of addiction, maybe. And if you were a police officer, I would say probably some sort of addiction. What if someone, if you were the police officer themselves who were doing this, you'd probably have some sort of addiction. What if someone says racist things at certain people, makes up lies and pushes against those who were victims, or perhaps finds a way to filter it out, or finds a new skill level to compete? A question you can answer. Let's say you liar. You lied this whole time about being somebody you're not. You lied about being in the FBI. You said, "Oh, I'm in the FBI. I rolled in parachutes my entire life." You're a liar. You lied. You sabotaged. You're a killer. I think a normal person would say. But the flip side is you have a blank slate. You have a reality behind what is wrong in life, and then you also have very big problems that are very serious and can get much worse. So you're looking at karma again. If you're the reality behind that, then what, right? So you look at karma, you look at the seriousness of the nature, but you can get caught up in things. You can have very serious problems, as we already know. It's not conclusively proven, obviously, but you could have very serious problems that go and create very big problems, right? There's no question about that effect can lead to effect. That's a bigger nature, but you ask yourself, why would they hide something so much? Because they might be racist, they might be prejudiced, and they might be plotting to attack the United States. Or any other country because they're racist, right? That's a bad thing, right? So, if they say racist things like individual, it's a notice in their choice system. Nazis use individual as individual ideas, or this segregation is it's a thing about racism. So when you say racist things and then you make up lies about them, it might be prejudices, it might be making up lies, and this is the first push their way to attack the opponent. In their segregation unit, they go and attack the other opponents. Doesn't matter if you're black and white. Are you purchased or owned, or are you actually black? These are good questions. Can you work somebody over so much as to believe in anything? So you wouldn't know until you know, as they put it. So mix up lies, and that goes for any maybe other person as well. White power, black power, it doesn't really matter too much, actually. But it does if you believe in democracy, and it does if you believe in voting, yes, or it does believe we vote. So the relationship there is anybody could put the idea of I look like somebody else on it, or I do something else. I was just thinking about the other day, but it's whoever's choice it is. I could dress in all white one day and say, "Hey, I'm not a painter. I'm just a regular guy like Morgan Freeman." But there's a culture shock or culture shock. So you would think, right? Just because I dress all in white and I believe that the law is white, does it really make too much sense? Not really, right? It doesn't make sense. Our thought like that is one thing, but then also there's a relationship behind the things that don't just fit in a pattern striking way, that are not through emotions, that are relatable to bigger things, right? Bigger things are democracy. Bigger things are safety, about population and culture. Those things have never just gone apart, really. These are huge things. Right? You're looking at far bigger things than your emotion can handle. They're so big that even like a support worker, not even an AA counselor, no one there is going to go and fix everything you can do, because it's such a big deal. Betrayal, though, that's a bigger thing. Does betrayal just fit in with population and culture? Population and that. Who knows? Population and control. Geez. So let's go to the next question here. That's a, I mean, new skill level. I mean, it goes back into the idea of vocational rehab. It goes back into, finds out a way to filter it out. How do you filter it out? You have to find some subcumulative reason, a way to do it. And the more you look at it, the more there's a pyramid there. But, the more you're uncreative, the more passion you believe in something that's false. Or, the finite reason to look into something. Hey, it's the FBI. But then look at the FBI and say, oh, didn't you try to serve Martin Luther with restraining order? Or like, oh, didn't you do whatever? And it doesn't really necessarily mean bad always, but I mean, yeah, you could quit. You could say like, hey, I'm not a part of that life anymore. Like, oh, I'm not a part of that brotherhood anymore. That's just how it works, right? You get out and you're gone for good. But if you're really racist, you're pushing for things, you got to think like, is it an actor? Is it somebody else like who's such an actor, like they lie so long just to get the answers they need? But are they a video actor? Are they like a teacher or like a professor or something? Who would know? Who would know what they don't know? Yeah, maybe we'd ask like, is that person not napping today? Is that person didn't get to sleep for 48 hours? Did they work for 72 hours straight? Did they work for a full week? So the reasons that today it's just kind of it's crazy. Would you invest in membership for a business society? I mean, maybe something better than that is, I mean, most people don't just invest in business society. I mean, maybe a membership to the, the foreign market for everyone in the like the area, the APAC or something like that, maybe. But yet again, I mean, like, why? So there you go. Is it investable to have no investable idea at all? There's nothing in it. There you go. Don't go invest and put your life onto something that could change in a moment. That's what we call dumb. Save the person who needs safety and help them stay safe. Help the others stay safe. The others aren't always the evil ones. The others sometimes are good ones. So there you are there. So let's go to the next question here. Should you be allowed to act, dress, or wear clothes in public like a mass shooter or crime suspect? Crime suspect? I mean, when a mass shooter part of the crime suspect. Should you wear damped clothes and honey? Should you wear clothes, street clothes with bear spray on them? Should you wear clothes that have been sprayed with hydrogen reducing? There's many things you could think. Or should you have holy water on you? I mean, that's a good question. I mean, like, should you dress in public like a what? I mean, what would be the answer? That why would we dress in public like that to begin with? Without a question. I mean, is it a trend of the actual idea? And we're learning something again, a trend of the idea of wearing clothes in public, or those aren't exactly clothes, but clothes that say, oh, I'm dressed like Schoolhouse Rock today, person with a shirt. Or like, oh, I was dressed like ACDC the other day, or I was dressed like the PepsiCo guy. Hey, my teacher gave me a PepsiCo book the other to read. It was pretty interesting. Once you go into the business of beverage management, you remember the syrup formula. So, there you go. Or, once you find a reality behind the time setting, it will matter because you won't use time anymore. So, like there's a whole thing behind it. So, it doesn't take the one of anything to do and figure out anything. It just, I mean, you might say true love, and it's like catching on, but the more people start to realize, oh, it's not about time; it's about now. It becomes more important to them as a way to find something new, find a way to leave the bad part of society and come back new and stronger. So, let's go to the next question here. Since we answered that, and then it was also answered that, and then it was also like real life. Should you be able to wear street clothes all the time, all times, at all times? Is this street clothes? Is what a mass shooter is relating to when they dress like they do, but black sometimes? Is it considered? Well, it's not like that. Okay. And are they dressed like that? Are they allowed to wear street clothes? Is a man allowed to dress in all black without smelling of orange? Is a man allowed to question the central identity of what it is? Are you allowed to smell like tacos a few times in a few different ways? So, like, there's not really a good answer for that. Can you smell like dead flowers? I mean, it's like asking a man, like, would you be a professional crazy person? Are you beyond the idea of not wearing street clothes at all times? Are you beyond like not working? Are you a worker? So the opposite question is like, if you wore street clothes all the time, are you allowed to work all the time if you have street clothes? And I start wearing street clothes, will I be able to work? So you have the answer there. And if you have street clothes, what would be as sturdy as the street clothes in which you can make? Like, is that like an oxymoron statement? Like, kind of like saying, oh, this person with $100 jeans gave me this, but they're made of jeans. You can't. They don't get expansion anymore, but then they also basically they're not a cult members made in the United States, and then also let me tell you, you'll get to work all the time with these. You say, oh well, okay. Are you sure? Like, oh yeah, the material in this cloth is way more better for your skin, and you're like kind of like okay, but you got to think like okay, yeah. It's kind of like straight going to like cotton in Mexico. Like, would you conclusively say, hey, that or the Indian cotton is the best? And you probably would say neither. Like, you pick one place in the world and that's it. And say like, oh, I don't actually have a professional sense. That's my self identity. So I mean, if you pick street clothes to wear all the times, I mean, maybe think about practicality of how to fit in street clothes. Like, if one day like you were fitting in and you had street clothes that were just white, do you think you'd be more vulnerable? Do you think people would professionally say, hey, you look like somebody wears street clothes and you look like a painter? Like, you didn't want to get too messed up. This can get bleached and get most of the material off or something, but you had the paint job anyway. Or like something else. Or kind of like saying like, I wear black shoes and they don't fit in anything other colors. But like, these are the only black shoes that you can use on the streets. Or like, I wear tennis shoes and like, I know a little bit about the things I wear, but I have a really heavy, risky job and I have to do a lot of things that require tennis shoes. There isn't a real, strength behind that. It's just harder over time. When you get multicolored things, you get multicolored things. So when you have street clothes, what does that mean? Does it mean church clothes? Does it mean clothes for business? Street clothes, like you're wearing like sneakers and things. So figuratively, what is the opposite of the clothes you would wear? What, like the anti-machine? Would you buy a package of victims' clothing and wear them? I don't think I would do that. But the emotion you can pour through of the response is a story enough, and it's a pretty big story at that. I mean, it's like kind of saying like, "Hey, I didn't do a good job the first time." You roll your eyes and kind of like, I didn't do a good job the second time. I work at the restaurant. I got a K through 12 school. I got to get my kid to go to, and it's private. Or it's whatever. It's not private. Maybe they charge me $100 now, or the irreversible fortune is like kind of saying, hey, if you don't have the emotion, the time to put in something, I think like it's not free will. It's an important justice you're serving, right? I mean, think like if that is all the emotion you're pouring in through it, I mean, you're probably going to pour some more emotion into it, eventually, and try to save the little you have eventually, right? So proportionally, it's hard. I mean, it's a hard question. I mean, you already know the answer to that one. So it's kind of like you have to find a way to create a cultural surrounding in a way. I guess that's what a history teacher would say. But at the same time, would they say that? Probably not, because there's a lot of stories and evidence and ideas that don't always go together. Someone's adopted, someone has a fake last name, someone was married, someone was found at birth, right? So I mean, does a story always add up? If it doesn't add up, same as like fortune from a family. You own the DNA company, but you refuse to let it go. I mean, there's no point in something that you cannot solve yourself if you can't solve it, right? But if you find a way to solve something that is just through prejudice, I mean, through reason that is saying a nonsense, it's like looking at dry blood all the time and saying, hey, we found a reason in which you were really doing it. I don't know. I mean, could not find a solution there. What I do know is certain things are illegal. I know that one for sure. Are steel bullets illegal? Kind of. Or selling railroad tracks from communities that have invested a lot of railroads from honest working people who mine metal? Kind of. Would powdering yourself and then dressing up and going out in the streets be considered street casual? It'd be negative, but yeah. See, I mean, there's no response from me to be a killer, but there's a response for people to collide with the emotion of what? Collide with death itself, with harm, with meanness. I don't really have a solution or answer to that. I mean, it almost sounds like alcohol positively alcohol intoxication, but I don't know. So you have to kind of take of it, as you will. Save these tires, save these feet from the stress, and kind of figure it out now, right? So it's an important thing. So let's go to the next question. What do you think victims or criminals do to stay in the top? All right, you're competing for the 1%. You're competing for even the half, the 50% mark. What do you do to start? I mean, you invest in something, you trade something, you find a way to do something. Yeah, you map it out. You're a sommelier for whatever you like. You like the best candle in town. You like the best cleaner in town. You like the best books in town. I'm just joking. I mean, you like a lot of things that a normal person has. I mean, a hobbyist or a worker might invest in a drill one day. They might invest in kits the other, but they might invest in invest in a way to learn strategy and strength and kind of figure things out. But a lot of the time, you don't see a lot of people investing in beyond the grave, right? I mean, if it's beyond the grave, that might make a bit more sense, right? So, I mean, let's say like you put in $5 for a $2,000 minimum. That's how many people? That's like 50 people, 100 people, maybe. Think about the progress there. If you have a huge amount of something and a little investment in it proactively, right? I mean, this doesn't have to be $5. It be minimum. And no one went over, anything because it just doesn't exist, right? You're looking at a relationship that says, either it's misreported or there's some sort of emotional intelligence there that it was forgotten on people. I think that's another important message that says, hey, if I was capillating, the information about a lot of problems, I'd say, yeah, probably it's important because the revelation there is looking at ideas that are important versus ideas that are considered falsified or incongruent with people. Incongruent versus IOUs and truths. What is that? Do you land off of something that can't be landed off of? Can you land off of planet Earth if you jumped? Could you catch a mass shooter's bullet if you wanted to catch a mass shooter's bullet? Could you wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning if I tap these things together in a really stubborn way with a rubber mallet? I don't know. It's just very quiet. It's very quaint. Could I wake up, an identity thief if they couldn't read? So, I mean, there isn't real purpose behind trying to do something that you can't do. Or you could say, yeah, this all information is stored somewhere, or they said they have the case file. I mean, so there's a question of like, could you do something about it? So, I mean, just doing that, according to these facts and ideas, you would be on top, even the 1%. Why would a criminal do it? To stay away because they're angry at the police? Does it just stem from the police being bad people? Does it stem from them being negative people? Or does it stem from them being harmed people? Does it correlate the criminal people from being the same people? See, I think we're learning words there now. As the criminal people don't always have schizocells. The police are not always cell death people, nor are they powdered negative people, people who are cleaned. Or the criminals should not be also cleaned. But there's a reality behind what you can see and what you can believe in. I mean, if you believed in a microscope as God, so be it. If you believe powder was something more and it was a growth factor or agile thinking, well, maybe it's that. Maybe you're proving something else right now, but it's important. So let's move on to another question, maybe another day. Okay. So what can you apply for mass shooting insurance? Yes, you can. There's many insurance places that will accept you. You just need the money, and it's higher up there. So if you're one person right now, I mean, I don't think you can get a quote for very much. I think for 10 people, I got a quote earlier. It wasn't from any official one. It's like $3,000 for about 10 people. I think for the year, $1 million capability. I'm waiting for the rest of the quotes. Maybe they're full up or something. But yeah, the relationship there is what is it? What is the relationship there? Because I have no idea. All right, so that goes into the question. I mean, you can get liability insurance. You can either get something like active shooters insurance, or you can get like something like terrorism insurance. And the liability for something like, terrorism insurance might be covered by the bigger guys, something like Liberty Insurance, but they don't have an active threat. You might have to go ask them. But do they have one for a sole person? I mean, you're not getting an automatic quote right now for a sole proprietor, maybe a professor who has to go and travel one place to the other and teach these classes about mass shootings through unknown reasons for unknown things. Why wouldn't you get this insurance? Is it a lecture all by itself? Why wouldn't you get the insurance? If you were living in Palestine, why wouldn't you get the insurance? If you were living in Israel, why wouldn't you get the insurance? If you're living in Iran, why wouldn't you get the insurance? If you were working at Liberty, why wouldn't you work at Liberty? If you were at another insurance company, why wouldn't you do what Liberty did? If you were a professor with the idea to work for a company, and he said, enough is enough, they won't do anything I say, I want to work at an insurance agency, I want to fix the world, why wouldn't you do? Why wouldn't they hire you, right? If you were a outspoken human rights advocate, why wouldn't you speak up about rights? So you see where I'm going. So why ask yourself, why, if I have the money, why would I spend it on insurance for liability for mass shooter or for active shooter threats, or for why would I spend the money on terrorism liability? Think about it. So if you had the insurance there, what will it do for you as a professor? I mean, for your school, yeah, but I mean, what about a professor? I mean, you work for the FBI, you're contingent on safe places, safe facts, and safe ideas. Does it sound like them? It sounds like them. It sounds like everything they do is foreign, stupid. It's uneducated. It is irresponsible. Is a good word. Not very formidable, meaning it's not very good advantage of testimony. A few things like that, but it's good at categorizing evidence. It's good at taking evidence and showing evidence. But when it comes to the profitability, they lost way more money than they could take in or just spend. But it shows that it's a capability of the world to kind of manipulate, look at different numbers in different ways, and then find characteristics of structure as strength, which no business should really have a place in doing. Is it's a reality of the unethical side. But when you're looking at consumer privilege, consumer choice, and you ask yourself why the FBI is right there and the only one, you have to think about it like, why is liberty the only one there? Why is the UN the only pantry food clinic for all of the countries? Yeah. Why is the international contract signed for all food places? Right. As humans, we have to evolve to having the need, not being within the question of the need. So why is there no refugees in the bigger picture? Why are there no support workers and their agencies are just downright saying, hey, case management, insurance, it's not that bad, right? Well, think about it like a normal person. Yeah, it is that bad. If you're a professor and your casualty behind these typos or mass shooters, I mean, yeah, you could say, oh, that's my second identity. I don't really reveal what I do as a professor, or hey, oh, I don't really do such and such for whatever reason. You're like, yeah. He's not really a professor. And he could be your caseworker, maybe, but the reality there is like, hey, I don't really believe you for this reason. You're insane. And the doctor goes and says, I'm the actual professor or the king of I'm the college director. Oh, he's insane. So, say it's a doctor or an FBI agent. Oh, he's insane. Or like a CIA agent, he's insane. But the CIA agent did something bad, right? Or if it's somebody who's an agent who's uninformed and says okay, I saw this and that. Is that you got the herd mentality? When you start catching up, people quit, people disappear, right? So would people disappear in the question of looking at their reality landscape or the idea of getting liability insurance? Or yeah, I mean, in a way, why wouldn't you get detained if you got arrested for liability or insurance fraud? Sounds like what happened with these two. Well, I would say, yeah. Why would a caseworker not get arrested for liability insurance fraud? Probably because there's a low amount. Well, yeah, there's an answer there. But also probably, well, what if all the people got the liability insurance that was owned by the same banks that had to invest? They had to make the same agreements as the dental office. And you know what happened? They couldn't afford regular white fillings, so they put the crowns in there because it's cheaper. It's mercury crowns. And then they'll say oh, don't ever let people talk to you that way because we'll get the stuff no matter what. Well, okay. So you could try one way, or you could say, hey, I don't know. Maybe the question is not if the mass shooter had a mental health question, but what if the other people had the mental health question as well, and they were being treated for something that was irrevocable of a cause of irrevocable of a cause that was not a true fortune. I mean, they didn't have anything in the fault of their own. Is that covered by anybody's liability insurance? Well, no. But then what if they say, oh, no, you're not able to do that? Or the state government says, oh, you're not able to do that. I mean, if they said it just like that, straight to your face, you say, oh, you're a robber? You just broke the rules. That's against the law. So no, unless you're a racist or some sort of supreme group or something. Well, you'd say, yeah. But what about on a daily basis? Why would you get liability insurance for not just one day? Why would you have to get it for a year? Yeah, I mean, it might sound like a neat movie now. 1 day of liability insurance for mass shooting. maybe in a different phrase or something. Maybe it will be the best movie compared to like, Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, James Bond. I mean, there's a list and list, and then we'll just keep on going on. Or, like, oh, that guy's cute. That guy's, oh, did he do something? Like, oh, he's a drug addict. I mean, the situation doesn't really just go on as simple as you could say, but it does say a few things. So, I mean, why do you think criminals are on top? How do they find a way out, right? How do you find a way out of something without support, counseling? How do you find a way out without that? If you're a bad doctor, if you're committing fraud, selling drugs, doing prescription drugs, you have a habit of a sex habit and you won't stop doing it or something. So like you have to see like, well, what if you're caught in the middle? What if the MS is caught in the middle? What if the person was caught in the middle and you already knew it, right? So it's the propaganda, it's the probability of that happening. It's high, right? You're already in the high percent. You're always sharing something. You're already sharing something that is real, right? In mass fortune, you already know that, when it goes to bad, you're supposed to go and get in the van and switch identities. This is how it works. You join the protection agency. The other ways are, finding a way to fall flat your face, right? Fall or get that midlife crisis and get bald, right? It's not because you get bald; it's because you maybe drink, you shut down the brain, fall, and your hair loses. You get scalped. So injustice isn't just sometimes, right? As though justice isn't just. But you have to find a reason to go and find that support system. I have to go to. All right, so I'm back here. This is not a house, right? So we're looking at the other realities here behind this direction of data. And gosh, written, I mean, whatever written you want to put in, the willingness of humans, obviously. You have a supportive need or a way to make something of this reality. So stop it if you see it. So the question here, can you apply for national insurance? You can. Will be willfully good for you to buy, to get. But then you also have to ask yourself, is there a monopoly in place? Is your money being used by somebody else in the third party against you? Just like the liability insurance for self-defense. Is your money being liably used? Is your choice of a vote, and we'll call money a vote, being used against you for your willfulness, for your willpower, to support you as a way to have a direct means? Yes. The actualization, the effort, the realization is also being used to not support you by creating a need for something. This need has a direct correlation. And you say like, oh, you don't have a fact, spot, or figure. You don't have a spot, fact, or figure. But it does tell you that you have a way to create an application, create a need for support system, which means you are creating a reality. You're being tested by something. And might question your every single last movement every single time. It might lie. It might come up with a choice saying, you're going to die or you're going to live. You might say, hey, I have a supportive reason for what happened, but you don't have a supportive reason for what will happen. We're talking to people like human slaves again. So if you were really apt on the question of human manipulation, if you were questioning the fact of self-defense in some sort of supportive way, and we're talking about tangibility, when you ask the professor who saves people's lives by talking to students about mass shooters, or student, researcher, or you're asking somebody with a lot of weapons you think they should exchange money on behalf of what they're trying to do? Stop something. Are they willing to stop it? Are they trying to stop it? Are they communicating this? Because all these little other facts said no, they didn't do it once. They'd say, oh, it is up for the minority of the population to create a pool and fund for that reality. It's like $20 a year, $15 a year, $35 a year. They're all questionable, right? So you're looking at the fundamental nature of it. I mean, you're looking at a mass shooter situational where it's club, and there's like the Sandy Hook Foundation. There isn't really one of them, right? There's not a whole lot of them at all. It costs money. It costs like hundreds of dollars a year for email support and domain registration. Maybe a lot more than that, possibly. You don't get it free. That's conclusive. I mean, you won't get that for free at all. Plus, then you'll also have a relationship with a membership fee scheme. How would you keep that money in an endowment or something like that without more money? How much money do you have to spend per year to get this endowment working? For a business, let's check, it costs $600 per year in California to run a business if you're poor. I mean, it's like no money at all. There's no rules. You could write them in a letter and say, hey, there's no statistics saying, oh, no, everybody does it and everybody gets away with it. No, it just racks up cash. It stays even. So when you look at the money there, you might go back to the old movies. You yoke the toke or yoke the oak. The mass shooting insurance is cheaper. You're spending $3,000 then. Is greater than $5,000 in the future. When you spend, let's say if it was $300 really, it's cheaper than spending $5,000 of contingency of being arrested during a non-threat scenario. Because indeed, you can get arrested for a non-threat or a non-threat event, which relates to mass casualties. Would it take very much? Not at all. It would take 1, 2, or 3. It takes the 3 categorizations of setting, surrounding, and then what's considered an exchange. You're going to exchange because you're in a personality, referendum, where you're creating a way to create a balance, kind of like the FBI would do. You're investigating your internal needs, plus you're adding your compartmentalization. That's your needs, your wants, your supportive figures, your efforts, and then your actions. And then you're taking those needs and wants and you're transferring them to your purpose, your function, your sole effort and ethic. So if you announce yourself as an FBI agent, as an actor, or if you announce yourself as a professor, not an actor, or something else along those lines, even a clown, it would be illegal. It would be illegal in the United States because it is a mass, it's an identity theft, basically. You're stealing the liability between something else that is not real and something that is real. It is a liability of itself. It's a choice. It is actually like being a notary, right? So it's a few different things as well, right? You're simplifying the way to intern something or make something. It is not. Does it go into the loop of, selling the liability insurance itself? It does, but the technical scheme, you might say, yeah, 90% of the people say no. 10% of the people say yeah, or 9% of it will, and then 1% won't. Why? Because it's an input and output, which is a very hard concept, and it's about the same numbers there. You're looking at the cool versus the heat. You're looking at the referendum or the nature there versus something else. It might be equipment exchange itself, or it might be language. Language is a big thing, or it might be the support system you live with, you grow up with. You find a way to create a necessary pattern for something and you kind of follow it. Or it might be the support system of someone else and says, you're on a list. You don't get off the list. You rewind. You just don't stop rewinding. So, I mean, It's not really a good way of putting it, right? Right. You put a seed in the money tree, right? If you put a way to put money into something, I'm not talking about sex, right? I'm talking about actual money. Like you're putting money into something that can adapt to something else. They might consider it investor trading, right? Or insider trading. They might consider it a qualification versus fact. You're leaking data or information. So that's a bigger question. You say if you said, California had the most funds in any state and they own BlackRock, I mean, who said they don't own BlackRock? I mean, who is the investor relationship that is tied up in the funds? Who has the most food? Who has the most support? So, I mean, you're looking at that, but then you're looking at the other parties in the situation, third parties. You're looking at relationships that don't have a qualification for their concerted effort. Do you have a concerted effort if you cannot create funding, create payments, you can't hire workers? Then, again, you're looking at the idea of terrorism. You're looking at the idea of network again. So, I mean, you might consider it fundamentally trading money that isn't real, or some sort of bubble that's going to pop. But when you look at the bubble, why would the bubble not pop? Because it's can't be found. You can't find something that has no real name, no real effort. If you hunted somebody down and kept on giving them falsified money to track them, or you gave them, cash in hand to weigh them down like coins, you still have to divide it, right? Weight the amount of items, right? What other things that like this, the volume of them? I mean, yeah, I guess the volume is a thing. But when you're looking at the amount of something, for example, you drink water is the same. You do something a lot longer, it has a lot more of a number scheme, but you know what I'm saying? So just because you divide it by the volume doesn't mean something. The height, maybe. But the reality there is probably pretty basic. I mean, maybe the height, maybe the weight, but the value of it as well, maybe. Is one odd equal and even? Well, yeah, absolutely. In that number schema, it does. So there's a probability of that, and what they consider maybe an operational cost, right? Of whatever delivery, of whatever need you have. So liability insurance, would it be the same? Well, contingency basis says, yeah, or else it wouldn't be ethically made. The liability insurance wouldn't make sense. So what are you measuring in that situation? Money. I mean, there are many things you're measuring. The amount of bullets you could have, the amount of death you could have. But look at the other side of the screen saying, oh, there's an algorithm there that says, you have the contingency to have no views. Is it the same then? And you're saying absolutely that matters. So, if one doesn't equal the right, I mean, you could pretend to be an FBI agent. I mean, whatever you want to pretend. You could pretend to have fake $100 cash, whatever you want. Would it matter? Would it be a gang then? There is no answer to something that is. It's without. I mean, you're looking at movies to look at cultural revelation behind what you need to do. It's in the shadows. You're kind of like being your own PI investigator, your own liability. See what I'm saying? There's no answer to falsifying records, to creating these ideas. Why would you falsify records about mass shootings? Why would you falsify records about mass terrorist attacks? I mean, a government official would have to do such strange things to do that, or even a judge. But you would have to be public about it somewhat, right? As it always has been. Watergate was public. The deep whistle. I mean, public. These people are public. Everything last thing they say is like leaks. Document leaks are always public. They've always been public. This is a revelation there. I mean, you go to the movie theater tonight in the open place, it's so public. You watch the movie outside, right? It doesn't mean it's not public. It's secure versus through. You're doing things now that could be more not resentful of your business. You're finding a way for your business to portray themselves, right? You're giving the message, right? It doesn't mean that everyone on earth made a mistake and that's bad. No, it means that your business is giving a message. That's all you're doing. Let's go on to the next question. I'm not like mad. That's just life. That is the law. Should mass shooting or mass casualty events be silenced or not talked about in regular conversation? Your little brother, your little sister, your neighbor, your housemate that keeps on inflicting pain on you, or let's say your roommate, your doctor. I mean, would you just bring? Oh, I was mass shooting today, or like your parents are looking like, oh, I was in mass shooting today. Like, no, probably wouldn't be put normal as a regular conversation, but you would also say, hey, never heard enough. Or like, oh, the world woke up, give it hell. Or like, you'd say, oh, I'm going to call the police on you. Straight away, you'd say, that's nonsense. Or like, you'd say, hey, I had enough of it, So when that happens, or, the other questions happen, there's a choice. You could say human slavery. You could say, you're a liar. That's a better maybe way of putting, you're not doing something. Maybe, but not really, because it's not the same thing. So you kind of like, do you trust the people around you? Do you trust your situation surrounding? If the question is, should you not talk about it in regular conversation? One thing leads to another. Well, can you trust the same person who is not very trustworthy and doesn't talk about it in normal conversation? So, I mean, a utility company or a business might consider utilities. Let's say, one positive utility for this, one positive utility. And that's basic business right there. You might say negative utility for this, cut this one in half. Mass casualty events, -1. It made me unhappy. Basic. Silence, -1. Freedom is always the answer for a contention or a coaching question. Not talked about. Pretensiveness for the forward past tense. That's a -2. It's a utility upon a utility. And regular conversation, +1. So we got -2, -1. Was it 1, 2, 3, 4? -4 +1. Wait, actually, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then maybe another -1 for should. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we get -4 or -3. What does that mean? It means that it's an entrance point there. It means that that support system is flat enough or even enough to find a way to enter the conversation, right? So we're going to negative numbers. We're going to not positive numbers or abrupt number or fractional numbers, right? You're finding a way to find self-esteem. But why would someone in this situation versus somebody who's not in the situation understand it differently? And they might get the mentality completely correct. It might be combat intelligence all the way. It might be, oh, hey, I'm the actual director of the CIA and I was made it there in Tepid Pro or something. Some random thing. And they kind of like, yeah, it doesn't really make too much sense. That's not even making sense at all to me. Why can't you talk about things? Well, because you don't have any liability. Things you'll just start working out and saying, oh, we don't need to get any paperwork. But what if it just doesn't work that way? You need paperwork at the moment. You just enjoy your time. You're a normal person. It's regular conversation, right? So you just say nothing. You zero. You just words, right? That's the system today. I mean, that's the answer you're going to get from a government employee. Yeah. Well, is it the answer you're going to get from a professor? Yeah. Is it the answer you're going to get from a computer? Yeah. Is it the answer you're going to get from just a regular teacher in high school? Yep. Is it the answer you're going to get from parents? I mean, maybe not. In the situation now, maybe not at all. So, I mean, when you get the answer from a dog, what would they say? They'd say like, "Oh, it doesn't really matter." Okay, they'd say it doesn't really matter either. Or a bird to go, or like what about a child? Let's say, yeah, it would make you a little sad. A child would make you a little sad, but like, gosh, might make a child sad too. But the reality there also says, honesty holds true. So if honesty holds truth, there's also truth. Well, maybe, but maybe not. Maybe if it's like, liability almost, but maybe also if it's, if it's something that is based on conversion of data. I mean, there's a lot of ways to put it, but there's also ways to kind of say, hey, would you say bad math? Would you say, oh, it's surprising math? Or say, oh, you can't hold this number to be truly liable. So it goes into the question of liability, logic, and computation, I guess. Maybe. If there is no known solution, as they put it, but there's also a solution of one that can never be met, and zero that can never be met. Those are contingents, right? There are contingencies that says you would like it to do that, but also it could do other things. You can technically count that, but you can only count it for these reasons. So, yeah, technically. I mean, if you're looking at saying one equals one in a math statement, yeah. If you're saying like computers are computers, in fact, and programming code is programming code, or working is working, or writing is writing. I'm kind of saying, yeah, it is very similar, in fact. So therefore, it is, and that's another question. So there's an answer, explanation, a question. What's a fair statement? A general statement is always a general statement. So you're asking yourself, how do you create a fair general statement without the absolutism? Without switching the system so the system can be. How do you do it? Is it life or death to say, no 3 times? It could be. It could very much be. Could it be reactive? It could be by choice. Could it be by solution? Always. Always is by solution. By exponential thinking? Well, yeah. By premeditation well, there's another word for it. Ampersand. Yep, absolutely. By a solution that is internal purely. We don't know at all. So I mean, general statement is a general statement, so therefore it's always going to be normal. So, I mean, is a period normal? Well, yeah. I mean, the conversation is normal. So there you go. Let's go to the next question. Can you bring up something like a mass casualty in conversations, or should you have to hide it? Does it give you a security clearance? It might be in the back of your mind. I mean, yeah. No. Will it end up on your federal record? I don't think so. I mean, you'll have to look at the qualities of like and concern. I think they're as kind of like someone like Ericsson would say it's your lifestyle, it's your life cycle. Should mass casualty events be silenced or not talked about in regular conversation? Are most kids nowadays drug users? Are most adults not drug users? They are drug users still. I mean, you're looking at a big question here. Should they be silenced or not talked about in regular conversation? Then we go into conversation. Would you hide it? Should you hide it? Should it be relevant to fact in order that you had been through this to see it? Is it more supportive that way? So there's a relationship between things you're seeing, hearing, and doing. Therefore, if you can find a reason there was infliction on another party who just was against dying, I mean, that's one thing. What about the support for not dying? Or what if that person was racist and they died? So there's a supportive means, there's also a supportive need for the conversation that stays logical, I suppose. there has to be some sort of logical behavior behind the action for it to happen, right? Even if it is not completely logical as a normal or other human would say, and you'd say absolutely it's not logical like another human would say. But then there's some sort of logical reason to do it at all and to believe that as well. People aren't just shelled, they're not frozen for life and go and do bad things. They have to find a reason to do it. But then if every connection doesn't have a connection for the motive, their adjective, it's language, it's framework. Why wouldn't you have one? So there you go again. Would you hide something you don't have to hide? Would you be free about something you should be free on? Free about, not free on, like a drug. Free about. Free about means like you are trying to help the world out. It's like a movement, strategy. I mean, you could say business. It's kind of a little bit indifferent, but or different. It's about being more normal than the others. You're being fine with who you are in a way. So you go to the next question here. I go to the next question. If a low-level police hire or sheriff was using drugs and misreported information, could it have dire consequences for the FBI or CIA or any other agency which would relate to the overhead DOJ? Yeah. And I think that's a big part, and you always want to find the solution because everyone's talking about addiction all the time. They're saying addiction, this, addiction, that. Right? You're like, cut it out. I just want to get some sleep like a normal person. You're like, oh, you don't want to be a normal person working there, and you're lying about using drugs again, and you're visiting this question. Well, first of all, I'm going to say, like, you're something wrong with you, big time. I think you are going to get handcuffed and detained by one of these guys here. But say you're using drugs, and I think you're a neo-Nazi or some sort of gang right now. And it's just like not normal gangs. It's kind of like gangs. And I'm not saying you could be high or maybe not high. Maybe I'm mean and nice. You seem paranoid, and you're either out for a gang or some other gang is about to get you, and this is a weird situation you're in. Yeah, I think you can end it weird, and everything's weird, but can't you end it weird? How else do you tell people it's going to be weird? And then why do you turn the conversation around and say it's not weird already, right? So if a low-level police hire or sheriff, I mean, you don't have to be low-level. Technically, you can be median. If it's low-level, mode and median, they go together like glue and glue. It's not going to change. Was using drugs and misreported information could have higher dire consequences for the FBI or CIA or any other agency which would relate to overhead DJ. And that overhead extends to plenty of things, working DIY things, or I'm sorry, DIY, do it yourself. DIY, yeah. Or something else, right? So I mean, quick fix. I mean, you putting things together that maybe are small time, but are big time somehow, at least from what we can see, but we are shelved in these ideas of contingency. That's even a better way of putting it than normal saying class and society just kind of stack them together. But also, we have to say that's completely normal from the mass scheme of mass murder, of mass jurisdiction. This just will never go together, I would say, unless nowadays we think karma. Say, hey, what if it is different? Question mark, right? They're generalities because they're time old, they're time aged, I think. But when you're looking at the idea of, misreporting information doing drugs, I mean, you fall asleep, you can get tired, you can forget. You could be like what they consider a spy, or you can consider a someone who's like working for a drug agency or a drug empire or cartel or something like that. You're doing it for a reason. There's no other reason. You just need to snap out of it, and you need to report the information correctly. I mean, that's what a normal, like, let's say, like cadet or like a police chief would say. Like, there's no absolute way I would have this conversation with you. It's criminal. But if somebody came to somebody else who knew this information and kind of like said, like, it's criminal, what you're saying, you'd have to automatically, be on the radar. You'd be on the radar and say, like, oh no, you're on my radar right now, and they take it over, go to loop, take it over, and go to loop, and to say, like, yeah, at that point, you know that what you know is that there was terrorism at hand, right? And there's terrorism. This person isn't just low level drug misreporting. They're mass murderer. I mean, if they're aware of mass murder and drugs are a problem, it has become obsessive in a way beyond obsessive. There's no way you relate unrelatable information that is not meant for this amount of what we might consider money or this idea of educational support. I mean, at a certain level, IOUs exist no matter what, right? I mean, according to the community law or community law that is been explained to the people, right? Or that has some sort of formal response between the community. But as money is high, how do you relate money being high amount of money, right? It's almost the same, right? It's almost the same as saying, as money is high, you don't say I use drugs, right? You could. It's the easiest way to get out of something, but it also says, well, hey, if the money is that good or the money is that bad, and then it also can be used for different contingencies to hide ideas, or you use the drugs and lie. What does that mean, right? I mean, the money's high. Does it represent anything high money? I mean, Coca-Cola exists as high money. That's easy. But why would you go from such a place of making almost $100,000 to $500,000 apparently to low-level drug use? I mean, even though all the facts and ideas don't, represent anything or mean anything, or they go around the wrong idea, does that make sense? And what if someone pops in the question? I help you. You help me, I help you, right? So, I mean, I'm the one with the idea of the drug box. I'm not in the DARE program. It's not the DARE program. You're looking at far deeper reaches of the societal commitment here. Show them, tell them, right? I mean, there's no informal reason to go and do something unless it was recorded or reported. Like, oh, well, that's on you, buddy. Well, what are you explaining? What are you saying here? Where's your idea at if you don't have any idea, right? And so what? You don't work. So what? You don't do nothing. I'm gonna fuck you. Like, there's a lot of questions you ask, but think like, hey, why don't you go back to Turkey and go and do what? It's there's no question about the ethics reason in there. I mean, you were in a conflict with your mind at all times, right? You're saying, we supply you candy so you can create saliva from it. And there's no real reason behind something that should never exist to begin with. You're doing wrong, you segregating, you harm, and they're all bad conducts. And they'll relate to things like terrorism. I think overall, most people will relate them to terrorism versus gangs. That's a normal thought. I think if you were to hear an officer say that, you would have to kind of immediately say, that person seems like they're having either a bad day, bad time. You would probably think they would be disheveled at the moment. They would only be thinking about themselves in a kind of like frustration way. I would think a normal person would think that. A normal person would also say, if you're giving me a look right now and you're saying, hey, I'm giving you a look, I'm this frustrated about this question, I think they're about to do something bad. I think that because if you look at the seclusive data and how it's not connected, like it should be. Real numbers are real things. You'd probably say, oh yeah, that's real reason for something, right? A $50 coin flat, $500 one, that means a serious a box in the ground, right? These are numbers and normal ideas for a reason, right? So it's not a community adjustment thing. Things don't change. It is real money for real reasons, right? They cut down the tree. Maybe when more people come, right? But then the same setting happens for different reasons. It's money that's flat for a reason. It's money that's flat for a reason because I would say in this instance or concept, we live in a flat world, but it's just true the fact that is respect for what they consider the dead, and you would consider your parents are going to die someday. You were living for your youth, or your your idea of what they consider your central identity or now. So when you lay to dead somebody who's for $50 or $50 coin, you're doing it for the sake of the father, the son, and the mother, right? So you're doing that as kind of like the $50 idea. $50 for like the hat would be like Abraham Lincoln's hat. Your $50 straight flat, it's cash. It's an equivocal, boundary or bond between what is $100. You're cutting it in half. It's a bond because it's free spirited. It's how much it costs for certain things. So. So should it be an emergency if someone spells something out in a search bar or online and doesn't understand the meaning of something or something else? Should it be an emergency if somebody spells something out in a search bar online? So, I mean, should the computer already, detect your language? Should it already be able to relate it if it's an emergency situation? I don't think there's a way out of that. I mean, you're looking at precursive data, turning off your phone, turning it on, updating it. You're doing all little things. But to change your language a little bit, they might say, what it types bad is typing bad. But then you look at the reality of, what's typing good, what's typing bad, system access. I mean, I think most back in the day, words relate, world internet to system access, because there were two separate things. Nowadays, if you're looking at two different things, you're looking at things that are controlling powers of representations of bigger things, right? Those things are now and have created bigger things like CIA, FBI, or I'm sorry, NSA, FBI, are counterprises, right? So we're now looking at enterprises with like missing parts. Like you're gonna have like the DOJ, you have like the NGA, a little different things in this bit. I wouldn't say NGA right away, but I would say like maybe USGS or something like that, which more probable because it has more money, has more investment, has strategy. And then you have like the things like the White House, which represents the Secret Service. And I'm not saying like president had done it, but the commanding effort there of controlling things at the Secret Service. There's a way about things with people, which it represents the need for the representation. So I think that's the bigger part. The compartmentalization is another question. Kind of like the British agents, we have had a completely different contingent for the U.S. government prior to maybe the Biden or Obama administration, and also the Nixon. It's changed. Bush administration. It's all changed, but also the contingency is also about ideas that just don't belong in certain because of the overall war or the war structure, what led to the war, maybe, but also what led to atrocities. So there's that. Let's go to the next question here. Can someone make a typo? Should they need to explain their typo or search history? That's a good question because it is relatable towards, anybody who picks up their phone, whether it's a police officer, whether it's, an FBI agent, whether it's somebody who doesn't know anything or another, they have, fair ability to search your phone at any time during a Terry stop or during, a check-in with the law. I mean, if they detain you and they suspect something's on your phone, they're able to search your phone no matter what. And that's, they have to suspect, they have to have reasonable, cause, basically. And that might be not in the plain view. I mean, just have the jurisdiction, like they have belief that you are a something, or you did something, and they're going to search your phone. But the reality is, are they able to look through your search results? I mean, it might probably depend on jury to jury, but I think the search bar, the reference in the affidavit you would give by being logged into the phone system will be in your user agreement probably, or be in the amendment for the phone policy to pass or something like that. But when you're looking at the typo of something, will it end up in your search results? Will it get better? I mean, no, that technology has changed a little bit. It will be more different. It will be healthier as the supportive system will create a change in the effort that is real. The opposing argument or the supportive means of finding a extra thing out of what you're doing happens all the time. For a researcher, for somebody who's a professor, for a worker who owns a business, does research, anything along the lines, they're going to have more information about you. It's almost like if you were to take somebody to court and these court cases are still existent, you could basically hand them a restraining order saying, no, enough is enough. You're not looking through this data for such and such. He's not teaching you through work, which you are not doing work at all, and you're reading people's things. Basically, you would be getting a restraining order for these things. But you making a typo and you making these mistakes, and you have to explain the typo to your phone. You have to explain it to the AI system, whatever it is, or the search history itself to show that you have an aperture or a understanding, a reasonability behind it. They might say, yeah. You might have the same straight hardline judges, the straight lawyers who represent, or defense attorneys for criminals. They might say, hey, we're going to represent you at the weakest moment of your life. And we'll say, hey, he didn't explain this typo. He didn't explain the search. Or they say, oh, hey, this refreshment happened for 9 months. Or they say, oh, that's the same exact time. It's just to go to the crisis department for rehab treatment. Or that's the same way you're going to sit in for rehab for 2 weeks or 2 months. They'll say, yeah, but then you'll say, oh, that's the defense lawyer, and he screwed me over, and he lied about, my search. He lied about a lot of things. And they'll say, yeah, and then they'll end up, they'll be in the same catch. They'll be in the same catch-22. Same judge will be in the same catch-22. The embezzlement funds will go away. It will go away, and it will go be sold for something. You don't know the rest of the story, but certain people have certain ways of screwing people over. It doesn't matter if you work for law enforcement. It doesn't matter if you work for whatever agency you work for. But the reality is, you making a typo doesn't mean, they're going to reread it differently. They'll say, oh, they'll use it against you. They'll say, oh, they have a standard dyslexia or something like that. But relationship there, you're looking at real, active, raw data about mass shooting. You're looking at real, raw, active data about people plotting or creating an exchange of information about such a thing, such an event as, quote unquote, a mass shooting epidemic or a mass shooting awareness campaign, whatever you want to put it as a layman. And you're ending up in your search history, and that will go back 5-10 years. Look at a video like this. Do you think it was been made? Do you think there was any activity behind making this video? Question mark. So, the response you have is supportive, but look at things that look like glue together. Look at things that look like groups together, activities together. So you got to ask yourself, why? But then you say, oh, if that's embezzlement, that seems like a gang. That seems like a gang. I don't know. If that's a drug user, that's a drug user, right? I mean, if that's somebody who's touched the drug, touched the drug. So, there's that principle. There's a Nazis that don't touch that. That's the money. Don't touch the food. That's the food. What do you do in that situation? You revolt. What if you're a drug user? What if you're handicapped? What if you're from another country? Should you report that information? Should you be in the country if you report that information? So, it's sleazy. You just ignore it. You just ignore bad thoughts and bad ideas. I mean, is it a typo to find out if someone's a killer and they're going to kill people? Sounds like you're stopping a hitman in the tracks. Sounds like you're stopping a murderer in the tracks. I mean, if you were going to say an FBI agent has all free responsibility to go and kill regular civilians, you pretty much call that a murderer. What's a murderer? Hiring somebody as a judge, to go take their tracks, even as a FBI agent, you're a hitman. A CIA, do they assassinate people? I don't know. Are they a most wanted figure who's not a predator, just like a predator? Like they didn't do, they have low level crimes. They're murdering. They're constantly murdering people. Well, probably they'll go take care of the killer. situation. Or they'll say, oh, no, we don't spill the information. We relate the information for the common good or the common reason. And we say common reason because it's CL flat. In finance, CLO means that you have a consumer interest in the organization global interests. Nothing more, nothing less. You're not getting these informations or facts. It just shows that you're not fine-tuned. You're not with an idea here. You have no reality behind doing any of these jurisdictions. There's no reason to do any of them, and then they have always had a response on some other level, maybe. Right? So, you're looking back, did the court purge something? I mean, a lot of questions, right? What slips for one day? I mean, could be the same slip, or you just have to remove yourself. If you're a judge in that situation, you just have to remove yourself and say, hey, I'm not going to get in the way. It doesn't work that way. You have no choice in the matter of removing yourself in that situation. It's suspect already, going and continuing to do something like that. Your doctor, it's the same way. You don't remove yourself, you're going to have some problems. You have people that help you in this corruption scandal. You don't want to hear it. That it's corruption. It's you're going to lose your license if you do not. You're barred for like 15 years, 25 years, or it's life. Might remove it with a petition, but you're removing yourself right now and you say all these things, you can get all the documents right, and they're already there. What are you worried about? You're at -0 red right there. There is no way you can further your justice now, as everything you do is used against you. I mean, where is it at? It's the green 1 second mark at all times. Boop, boop, boop. Doesn't matter. You can see better. So that's what they say as kids, at least. So, and I'm lolling around as don't turn into one of those kids. Ever. 1% of something. Can you be the 1% of something? Would you be the 1%? I think we went over that. So let's go to the next question. Can someone interfere with the response of life or death to question the validity of mass shooter's victim? And if they don't agree, take the case with them? What are you talking about? Can someone interfere with the response of life or death to question the validity of mass shooter's victim? Can someone interfere with the response of life or death to question the validity of mass shooter's victim? And if they don't agree, take the case with them. So you don't agree with someone and you say, oh, no, I'm going to take the case with me. What would you think? Can someone interfere with the response? So you're interfering with the validity. You said, oh, I've decided to do this and that for researcher. Would it matter for not a researcher? Should they be more freaked out if they weren't a researcher? I would presume, yeah. I presume there's somebody who's not a researcher would be freaked out. Somebody with an artifact of idea. So who gets to make the rules and who doesn't make the rules then? Who gets to make the rules about nonsense and nonsense? If you had no views for an insane subject, as we're giving free money away right now, and I think right now it's a good time to log into this question and say, yeah, I think so. You have to say, oh yeah, if you're interfering with the life response of life and death and question the validity of mass shooter's victim. Ed Pro Moi, I took you to court the other day and he didn't really come up with a real reason. So it's kind of like, you're dodging the question again, kind of like giving these hints why the lawyer who made too much money, who is a professional, is kind of questioning the identity of themselves. Should I take the money? Should I not have taken the money? Should I not take the money and run? Or kind of yeah. We're kind of should I question the validity now when there's a free time? So you're yeah, we're going back to the basics again. Can someone interfere with the response of life or death to question the validity of a mass shooter's victim? To question the validity of a mass shooting victim. I think that's what I'm saying. And if they don't agree, take the case with them. And if they don't agree, take the case with them. So, I mean, you could detain somebody for life or death response of your life. Can someone interfere with response of life or death question the validity to question the validity of mass shootings victim. So, like compared to like a bank robbery, how your day is, what did you do today? I don't know. Or how about like the answer is no. So why would it matter if one person said it versus the other? Is there an angle of intrusion, or like I know how to attack you kind of thing? Or like I followed you to the hotel room and I attacked you. I attacked the owner of the hotel room before you got here. I think there's a lesson behind this. I think there's also like plenty of evidence in real life, juryman, whatever you want to call it. And the question, the fact, like, if they don't want to take the case, and if they don't agree to take the case with them, because like, I don't take the case with me. I don't even know what that means, to take the case with you. It sounded like a good idea at the time, but like, is it a good idea at the time? You almost sound like Job from Arrested Development. I don't watch that. It's nonsense. Looking at the reality, if you don't take the case with them, why would you do such a thing? Why would you believe that, like, it's even like that? What would you think a normal person would do such a thing ever? Like, are you poor and living on the streets? As is like they don't agree to leave like the case with them because it would be too vulnerable. Or it'd be like kind of like you're too rich and like you'd be scarred for life if you were that scared. Or like kind of like you're a middle person, like you're like a Mormon living in a neutral house with the medium income, and you have like a job you work at and you're doing pretty good. Would you say like they don't agree to take the case with you? Because, I mean, you're figuring things out right now. I don't know. Or like like if you if you interfere like your caseworker, and they kind of like you question validity of a victim, like, oh, like you give them a task and kind of like go, oh, give them a one for everything, and so like, hey, oh, or like no and oh and like oh and like oh. They're gonna like, oh, like let's smooth this out, like let's smooth it out, and kind of like we're different people back then, but we're different people now. There's a choice in it, and if they don't agree to take the case with them, I don't even know. If I could put it like a slang, and this is apparently slang, I don't know. It's kind of like I've had enough. No more fake money, no more this. AI is in command of full logical non-segregation. But if they didn't agree to take the case with it, I mean, it costs them money, it costs them liability. If they were the caseworker, they can't just ditch the case. Right? Somebody could sue them, but maybe not, because it's so confusing. Who would say it at all, right? Who's to say what and who's to say whatever? But who is to say they don't agree to take the case with them? Do they agree to at all? I mean, what? At first, I would just say like question mark. Why is this person even doing this? I would think like no. Actually, why is the person doing it? Really? Is this a real question? There's no, I mean, something wrong with this person. No, something wrong with them. Let's go to the next question. Can a regular cop or another official who feels suspicious of someone who is referenced in a drug, let me slow that one down. Can a regular cop or another official who feels suspicious of someone who is referenced in a drug or mental health crime be detained or Terry stopped for the testimony of a mass shooting or reference that does not check out to what the officer or agent says? The self-report itself, you're in a mental health crime, drug, you've been accused of, let's say, being a mass shooting, not a mass shooting. You've been Terry stopped. They ask for your testimony of this and such, or they give you a Terry stop and they just ask you. And it's under the jurisdiction of mental health crime, not transient law, not anything else, or I guess disheveled law, because everything is even in society or some sort of normal way, and there's no bad guys then and there. But then the victim in this case says, they aren't trusting me. and then the officer or agent says, they don't check out. I mean, what would you say in a situation like that? Let's say like the improbable, facts or evidence that you've gained as a professor, or just crazy. I'm not going to go to this level, I think. Or you would hope they'd say that, and you would just be like, "Oh, you are the bad guy," and you just punch him in the face. I don't know. The reality there is like, what would you do to an agent who like falsified information, said on the spot, said, "You're a killer." Or like, you're actually turning the question around and you're insane about relating information to a mass shooting. I mean, and I'm trying to think of the reality there, like what coincidence or relatability. I mean, like looking at a question like is this person schizophrenia? Like, are they solving schizophrenia, or like they solving the idea of like bipolar episode? I mean, there's a difference, clear difference between these things. But like, when you're mean, angry, drunk, obsessive, or you're making things up that are exaggerated truths of lies. You see what I'm saying? Like of like you're dropping a notion of the principle of lies, right? If that's what it's about, and that's exponential, then so maybe like think about like, I lied during a Terry stop and I tried to murder this boy. I mean, like a little bit of like the Clockwork Orange going on, or like kind of saying like, why would an officer or a police officer or an FBI, whoever it is, why would they start thinking this stuff? Like, or like the testimony of theirs and their court reporter, and they've like advanced to the classes, and they're kind of like, yeah, I see some relative connectivity there. I would say, like, if one person said it, they have a trust system in place, important. Kind of like the Nazis would be. But I would say, like, if the support system was, mental health crime, I mean, anything to be key to car. You you crashed into like another car and you left a note there. That's a mental health crime there. What about, your friend doing it and they're giving you your number and saying, we're detaining you to testimony, and you're like, I'm observing, or I'm relating towards my job. I'm a professor who has to contemplate or interview people. I'm a reporter. I have to interview people and say like, I observe people who do mass shootings, or like, I'm a victim of a mass shooting. I'm observing this because this is what I'm doing to do studies for. Same principle. I mean, basically, unless you're like, loading weapons. I mean, what normal person would do that would kind of like say like, I dress to impress, or like, I have geolocation, or like geolocation is gone now. So it's like a bigger deal. What about like, I seem like a kid. I wear kid sunglasses and wear a kid shirt. So, I mean, what do you want the person to say? Like, here's my agenda, or like, here's my security clearance. I work as a teacher. I have a security clearance to teach FBI agents who they are. So, I mean, the reality is like a twisted mentality. But like, when you think about twisted mentalities, you're like, bad versus even worse. And they might say like open and close, open, close. Like, your dad's testing, like, did you leave the candle on all night? Like, no, I mean, like, really, there's some similarities here that just are not normal. So there's that. But I think this is about it. It's about 2:05 a.m. PST, and we finished all the questions today. It's Wednesday, August 5th, 2026. So you take care, y'all. You have a good night, and you stay unfragile for whenever.